Thank you very much for that introduction. When I heard Sue's introduction and all the things that she'd done, I thought, wow, this is going to be quite a hard act to follow. But I recognise the art of the professional communicator and building a picture about us. Thank you very much for that. The real reason I'm here, I suppose, is people have paid tribute to Bronwyn, and I should make my own. I worked in children's services workforce and education in my policy travels, and there is the Bronwyn test, whatever she says about this, the Bronwyn induction that everybody goes through in Scottish government. And I like to think I came through that with flying colours because it's the second time I've come back. But what I really take from that is actually the fabulous work that Bronwyn and children's government have done to galvanise and mobilise communities together to talk about these really serious issues. And in the dark corridors of Victoria Quay, where you can sometimes wonder where the hell I'm doing this stuff, getting out and talking to people who starts to make sense of all that. So I'm really grateful to Bronwyn for the opportunities that she's given me. There are wonderful stories about Bronwyn and ministers, especially a recent one with a personal list that I'm absolutely not going to share that with you, but she knows what I mean. So, what I want to talk to you about, I think it picks up some of the themes that we've covered already. It's about the development of the outcomes-based approach to government, where it's come from and where it's going. And I hope, although this partly sounds a bit abstract, I hope it makes sense to you, and I hope it gives us a platform for talking about and continuing the conversation I've had already. I'll pause briefly for introductions, and just to add to the comments about my current role in local government. So I'm head of local government division, and what that means is broadly we sponsor local government insofar as anybody can sponsor an interesting entity in Scotland. But what it means is it's oversight of the partnership-based approach to how we work together. It's local government funding, so my budget, which I try not to think about, is about roughly £11.4 billion, a further the entire Scottish budget, and there's a matter of sort of interest to most of you in the room and somewhere today. It also includes oversight of the scrutiny and audit of local government undertaken by the Accounts Commission. And alongside this role, and adding to my general popularity, I'm responsible for local taxation, non-domestic or business rates, and council tax. And I was interested in Sue's comments about corporate social responsibility. Anybody who's followed the discussion about the public health levy recently and been in discussions with Tesco, Asda, Morrison and so on, might have a slightly different take on that conversation, but that's for another day. The final substantive area of business that I cover, and it's central to what I wanted to talk about today, is the development of a place-based approach to government. And this is broadly through community planning and single outcome agreements. And what we've also done is we've established a network of what we call location directors from across government to provide a bridge between community planning partnerships and central government. I preferred Sue's description of a movement of mass collaboration, but then again I'm a traditional bureaucrat, so that's my version of it. And I'll say a bit more about some of these things in due course. Actually, the real reason I'm here is because I'm actually hard-pressed and perpetually underachieving father of 3 small children. Anna aged 9, Kirsty aged 7, and Fraser aged 5. 3 children I don't deserve, thankfully they're not old enough to realise that yet. What I wanted to do is also to take the opportunity to pay tribute to the wonderful staff at Trinity Primary School, and Mr Squirrel's Nursery here in Edinburgh, and I'm sure some of you in the room will be familiar with those institutions. So anyway, to business. What I wanted to talk to you about is the journey that we've been on. I'll set out some things about that framework before describing the progress that I think we've made and where we need to be going. And this story usually starts in 2007, and the changes that came with the election of the SNP administration then. And those were really substantive changes. It led to a refocusing of an outcomes-based approach to government around the purpose and the national outcomes. And it brought hard questions which are still being asked about the fitness for purpose of the governmental machinery. And you all have experienced salary-based working that is legendary about Scottish government over the years. And this commitment held at a local level as well. We had the Concordat with local government, held in a new partnership. We had substantial reductions to ring-fence budgets. We had a reduction in the burden of scrutiny. We developed key strategic frameworks to develop key areas of social policy. And we had the embedding of an outcomes-based approach, bringing together national and local parameters with single outcome agreements. And I think we've already touched on this a little bit, and I think it's fair to say the jury is still out on whether we've made the progress that we would like as quickly as we would have hoped. And I share that general unease. And it's partly about how do you describe in ways that make sense about what we have achieved, compared to when we had an input model to approach to government where you can describe inputs and outputs relatively straightforwardly, but can you really describe the impact they have on people's lives? And that's why, of course, we made the change. Sue talked about the social challenges of Edinburgh in 1575 and the next 500 years, and I think I'm going to take it even further back, because my good friend Colin Mayer, who's the Chief Executive of the Local Government Improvement Service, and a man who some of you will know, summed this dilemma up neatly at the COSLA conference this year. What he did is he quoted liberally, and some thought rather bravely, from Greek philosophy to demonstrate how an outcomes-based approach is at the root of our theories of government from the earliest times. What he also said is he went on to note that Athens had yet to deliver on a single outcomes agreement. And I think, that might be a little unfair, but I think you get the point. Now, current events in Greece, I think, do bring a kind of perspective to the challenge that we face in Scotland. But the general point about the pace and value of change is undoubtedly something we all need to be thinking about. Now, I said our story starts in 2007, or usually starts in 2007, but actually the consensus that we have around the need to tackle wicked issues, focus on outcomes, join up services about real people, has been a feature of government since at least devolution, but particularly marked since devolution. And I was party in previous working lives to the debate on the integration of children's services around Scotland's children and the implementation of Changing Lives, which is a social work review. And this high-level consensus about key elements of the policy agenda and the sustainability of policy development is a key element of the way that we do public services in Scotland now. And I think and I hope that that sends a very strong signal to all involved in public service delivery. The progress that we've made in this regard struck me really forcibly earlier this week. I was sitting alongside Mr. Swinney as he gave evidence on the local government finance settlement to the Local Government Regeneration Committee. And representatives from Solace, CITFA, COSLA and each individual member of the committee unanimously endorsed the focus on prevention that lies at the heart of the budget. And I think that's just an incredibly powerful symbol about the consensus that sits on top of the policy agenda. But I wanted to take you back to my own kind of jumping off on this journey, and that's the rather dry subject of the Local Government in Scotland Act 2003. And this legislation contained a package of measures to support local decision making and the delivery of better and more responsive public services. And as Sue was speaking about wind farms on the road to Aberdeen, actually part of advanced wellbeing was part of that legislation. And one of the things I'm interested in is the extent to which local authorities have exploited that opportunity, and I think Sue made her own thoughts clear on that point. But the element I was really going to pick up on was the establishment of community planning on statutory footing. Again, not a new development, but really mobilised and galvanised through that legislation. And the key thing in that is the duties established on local authorities to initiate and maintain community planning, and of the core partners in health, enterprise, police, fire and regional transport to participate in those arrangements. And community planning remains a cornerstone of much of the business that we're talking about, of our approach to local service delivery. And looking back to the framework we established in 2003 is illustrative. What we said was that community planning was about making sure that people and communities are genuinely engaged in the decisions made on public services which affect them, allied to a commitment from organisations to work together in providing better public services. And we set up two further principles as the key overarching partnership framework to coordinate other initiatives and partnerships, where necessary acting to rationalise and simplify a cluttered landscape, and also about improving the connection between national and local priorities. Now, it's not 15 whenever it was, but it was 2003. The powerful statements of intent, they continue to resonate today. How are we doing against them? How familiar are you with community planning and how it operates in your locality? And I'm not jumping to conclusions on that point. I think there is a very mixed picture across Scotland. What I would like to do is draw your attention to a report we published earlier this year, which is called Local Matters, published jointly with COSLA. And what we were trying to do was set our toe in the water about the direction of travel that we thought was needed. And this was before the elections, before the Christie Commission, so we were really just trying to help frame the debate. And I think we did so quite successfully, I would say, but you can judge that for yourself. I mean, our key messages in this report were that the local outcomes-based approach is the right approach, that it is working, and that it could do better still. And we do a range of case studies. Actually, some of the things that you've been visiting today were some of those yesterday, some of those case studies. But we also identified some of the challenges. And the sort of things we identified that we thought were serious issues for us and which we needed to grapple with under this framework were about instilling an outcomes-focused culture throughout organisations. And Michelle's comments, I think, absolutely confirm that. It's about the relationship among community planning partners that needs to be strengthened, and the relationship with communities and with third sector partners needs to be strengthened. More effective performance management arrangements, again, not to beat people, but to understand what progress are we making and how do we know, and public reporting arrangements that give confidence to people about the public services that we're delivering. Service redesign. Many of our case studies are fabulous and truly telling stories, but actually, do we systematically look at the way that we deliver services and from first principles, in fact, to focus on the outcomes. A focus on early intervention and prevention, and critically, the need to align budgets more deliberately on an outcomes focus. So, as I say, those are the messages that we found looking at community planning and single outcome agreements over the period that they've been in place. Of considerably more weight and significance than our report was of course the Christie Commission and the government's response, and Sue paid tribute to that earlier. I'm sure most of you are familiar with what Christie said, and what's central for me in that is it's not so much the going into the ether in the sense it has done that because we've all kind of absorbed these principles, but what it tells me again is that notion of consensus, of agreement. And it's fascinating to observe that, and it does represent a genuine moment of opportunity that we need to grasp, and that moment will not last forever. And I'd like to tell you that I think that is happening. I mean, arrangements have been established within government to take a coordinated approach to reform. Key partners within local government and beyond have been drawn into that. And as our contribution, we're developing ideas now for a thorough review of community planning, single outcome agreements, to take stock of where the agenda needs to go. But what I should do is also, as other colleagues have done, is to say a word about the financial context. It is extremely challenging, and the numbers do paint a stark picture. Over the period of the UK government spending review to 2014-15, the Scottish budget is being cut by 12.3% in real terms. Our capital budget, a key driver for growth, is being cut by 36.7% in real terms. We estimate that it could take until 2025-26 for the Scottish budget to return to 2009-10 levels in real terms. That's an adjustment period of 16 years. That's most of the rest of my working life. That amounts to a cumulative amount of resources for growth of close to £40 billion. So, look, these are hugely significant challenges. And you'll already be having to work to come to terms with that in your own working lives, and to be thinking about how you deal with the sustained challenge that that represents. The wider economic and social context that we're operating in, that just makes this all the more difficult and will bring additional pressure. And the impact of that, I need to go back to where I started, the impact of that is of course being felt in the local government settlement for the years looking ahead. We have been able to maintain local government share of the budget above that inherited by 2007, and the details of the settlement are still under discussion. But what is really good news for us all is that local authority leaders have accepted the settlement in principle. And that agreement and the renewed partnership between national and local governments is vital to all of us for service delivery and what will undoubtedly be a difficult period looking ahead. So recognition of that challenging context and the determination to respond to it is a major pillar of the Christie report, as Sue said earlier. And it's on this element of the reform agenda that I'd like to focus now in my closing section. It's that focus on prevention as a key driver for improving outcomes and managing demand. Sue talked about the 75 and 25 and how we need to focus on the 100 that is the remaining 75. Well, what Mr Swinney always does at these points is he said there's still £26 billion going into public services every year in Scotland. That's a heck of a amount of money to be thinking about how we improve the outcomes for the people of Scotland. That's not to negate at all the difficult challenges, obviously are there, but we do need to focus on what we can achieve rather than the problems that we face. And as a starter contribution to this, and I mentioned it earlier, the spending review set out ambitious plans to build on the existing change fund in rural people and to establish new change funds in early years and early use and reoffending. The discussions around those funds are still ongoing, but the firm intent is that they will be rooted in local decision making, informed by national partnership-based approach, and it will focus on the wider alignment of public sector budgets on a preventative basis. And this focus on prevention through the change funds and more broadly, and securing this wider alignment of budgets, will be a major focus of activity for the government in the period ahead. It is right in itself, and it is absolutely essential in the current financial circumstances. And the development of an outcomes-based approach to government partnership and to focus on place through community planning and single outcome agreements will make a major contribution to supporting the success of us all. So that's all, just about all I had to say this morning. I hope it's been a helpful canter through where we are in the agenda from a national perspective, and notwithstanding the challenges, I hope you share my enthusiasm and confidence about what we can achieve looking ahead. It is essential, of course, that we do that. But I'd also like to close by saying that it's a real privilege to have the opportunity to be able to meet and talk with you who are doing vital work as real people in the field. And again, on behalf of the 3 small people I mentioned at the top of this very much, I'm particularly self-appreciative for doing so. And finally, we talked a bit about sharing practice and good practice and illustrations of success. Now, new Minister for Local Government Planning, Ian Campbell, has been out and about community planning partnerships, and she's been really struck by the enthusiasm and creativity that she has seen. She has quite rightly suggested that we hide under our bushels a little bit in Scotland, and we need to be a bit more forthcoming in sharing good practice and innovation. So please bear that in mind and be in touch with us and Ms Campbell to give us some ideas for some visits. Thank you very much.